Well, this week we're bringing on United States Senator Coach Tommy Tuberville to talk about what's going on in D.C. And you guys may not know this, but the very first Albert Patterson Courage Award that we've ever given, which is going to be our award going forward, for anyone who has risked their life, livelihood, or personal reputation to do what is right and necessary. Coach Tommy Tuberville was the first recipient of the Albert Patterson Courage Award, and I want to share with you the story of Albert Patterson just to kind of set the backdrop. So in the 1950s, Phoenix City, Alabama was an absolute cesspool of vice, corruption, gambling, prostitution, you name it. The people of Phoenix City were prevented from flourishing because every single institution in that city and county was captured by the mob. One man said that won't do, and he stepped up, a little country attorney named Albert Patterson, and he ran for attorney general with the distinct message of ending corruption in Phoenix City and the state of Alabama. That's what he ran on, and he ended up being nominated and winning the nomination. And he was speaking to a group and kind of predicted that he might not get to swearing in because he knew he was a marked man. And in that kind of prophetic prediction, shortly after that, he walked out to his car from his office, and a sheriff's deputy walked up and put a gun in his mouth and fired 3 rounds and killed him. And while he died, his mission didn't die with him. The governor of Alabama at the time instituted martial law and came and cleaned up Phoenix City, arresting anyone who had anything to do with it. There was hundreds of trials all across the state to put these people in prison where they belonged, and the people of Phoenix City were finally free. And what's even greater is that his son became the attorney general in his place and went on to become our 44th governor, John Patterson. And as one of my friends says, when he told me that story, may we be that father and may we raise that son. So we're bringing on our very first Albert Patterson Courage Award winner, Coach Tommy Tuberville, to talk about what's going on in D.C. coming up on 1819 News, the podcast. We have an incredible culture here in the state of Alabama, but our politics and public policy don't reflect the people of Alabama. Media drives culture. Culture is what drives politics and public policy. Welcome, everyone, to 1819 News, the podcast. I'm Brian Dawson, CEO of 1819 News, and host of this here podcast, where we're in pursuit of a free and flourishing Alabama every single week. And man, are we ever in that pursuit today. We are bringing on one of, if not the most conservative United States Senator in all the land and all the nation, Coach Tommy Tuberville. We're going to be talking to him a little bit about being vindicated on the holds that he took so much heat over, Space Command, Title IX, eliminating unjust double tax on Social Security, a bunch of different things. And we're just going to dive right into it because I know I want to respect his time. Typically, I go into my sales pitch, but we're just going to hit it. And Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Brian. Great to be here. It's a beautiful day here in Washington, D.C.
Well, hopefully it's warmer than when I was in your office last time.
It's a little warmer.
So, a little bit, good. Well, I want to dive right into I think the biggest issue that's gone on in your realm in the last couple weeks is the fact that you have been completely vindicated on the holds that you placed on the military promotions when you went up against the Biden regime and the Biden Department of Defense because they were using federal funds to basically allow women who worked for the Department of Defense to pay them for their travel and pay them for time off so that they could go and abort their children in states that would allow it. And you held that up. So talk about kind of what it feels like to see that come full circle.
Brian, we had the longest hold in the history of the Senate up here. We had close to 1,000 holds on promotions of 2 and 3 and 4-star generals in the Pentagon. I hated doing that, but I was trying to get Joe Biden and his cronies over there, trying to get them to understand they were breaking the law. But thanks for you, and thanks to you for standing with me at a time when a lot of even Republicans were not fighting for me. But it's, not one penny of taxpayer dollars should go to fund abortion in the military. Not one. We have a Hyde Amendment that says you can't do it. So we We've been fighting this for nearly 2 years now, and I'm thankful that President Trump and Secretary Hegseth are returning the Pentagon to a killing machine and not a daycare center. You know, our military should defend life, not destroy it. And that's been my motto. And thank goodness for President Trump and Pete Hegseth for doing the executive order. Now we have to, you know, get something in the law because in 4 years this could go back and they could start taking lives again. But at the end of the day, we've got it stopped as we speak.
Awesome. Another thing, a lot of the accusations that were being hurled at you while you were making that stand from fellow Republicans was that Space Command was going to get moved and they were going to use your holds and your position on abortion as justification of getting Space Command out of Huntsville to go to Colorado Springs. And now it looks like that's going to turn full circle as well.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen with that yet. I feel confident that we will get Space Command. That's yet to be done. Next week, I have a meeting, matter of fact, this week with the new Secretary of the Air Force. Now, Secretary of the Air Force is the one that actually makes the decision of where Space Command goes. President Biden or President Trump had a Secretary of Air Force that put Huntsville number one and ordered Space Command to go to Huntsville. President Biden came in, he took another Secretary of the Air Force, and even that Secretary of the Air Force said, well, it needs to be in Huntsville, but President Biden played politics and kicked it to Colorado, and that's where we're at right now. But we'll have a new Secretary of the Air Force here in a couple of weeks, and hopefully he and President Trump do the right thing. And I feel good that they'll do it, that we'll end up having Space Command start construction in the near future behind the wall at Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville.
That's amazing. Another thing you've been in the news about recently is eliminating the unjust double tax on Social Security benefits. Talk about that.
Well, in 1984, Joe Biden, being a senator at that time, and he was also a crook at that time, by the way, it's been proven that he decided that we should tax Social Security for the second time. And so they changed the law, Democrats did, and they started taxing Social Security and taking out hundreds, if not thousands of dollars each month from people that had paid into it. So President Trump made that one of his campaign promises, and he will end up doing that. But I want to make sure that we make it a law, run it through Congress, get it passed from the House and the Senate, and let President Trump sign it, where when the Democrats come back aboard, they're not able to take money again from people that are in retirement. So we have a bill now that says you can't do it. We got to get it on the floor. And again, it's the end of the day, uh, it's the most obvious thing that we should do because people cannot live off the money that they're getting paid from Social Security right now because Social Security it's almost broke anyway, but we have to do something to help the American people out that are in retirement.
Yeah. On getting that legislation passed, to some degree, it seems like Trump is coming in over the top with a bunch of executive orders, and then he's going to follow those executive orders up with, the House and the Senate basically putting legislation that reflects those executive orders. And on the Senate side of things, what are we going to do as far as holding John Thune accountable that he's actually going to reflect more of a America First movement rather than a Mitch McConnell movement?
Yeah, he has no choice. He's working for President Trump and the American people. John Thune's done a good job to this point. Now, we haven't done anything other than confirm cabinet members, but in the future, we're getting ready to do either one or two reconciliation bills. And some of this stuff will go in the reconciliation bill, whether it's the one big bill that has everything from taxes to the border and immigration, or just one bill where it has taxes in one and the border and some things in that one. So we have two that we can do. The problem is it just takes so long to get it done. They're having problems in the House getting enough Republicans to agree on a top line of how much we can spend. And so at the end of the day, we've got a lot of work to do from the House all the way to the Senate with President Trump. President Trump's done a very good job of bringing the House members together and and getting close to them and letting them know we've got to get this done. Done the same thing. We were down at Mar-a-Lago this weekend with President Trump on Friday night, and he explained the same thing to us as senators. And we've all got to be on this together. We've all got to be in on it. We got to understand it together. We got to know what we're doing because we've got to do it for the American people. Again, these tax uh, laws that we have in place right now are President Trump's tax laws, but they expire December the 31st of next year. If we don't get these permanent for the American people, each person in the country next year will be at least $1,000 less uh, in their paycheck because these tax laws will go way up. The percentage that you'll have to pay to this clown show up here, which is federal taxes, will go way up and at least $1,000 per person a month.
Mm. What is it like? I guess I've never seen true conservatives be in the position of power when it comes to if someone goes against the America First agenda, if someone goes against Donald Trump's agenda, you have the richest man in the world and people like him and Charlie Kirk who are basically saying, we're going to primary you and we have the means and the ability to do it. That seems kind of new to me. What do you think about that?
Well, people are being held accountable, Brian, and it's got to be done. We've tried it the other way. We've tried it the politicians' way. You see what it's got us into. Democrat and Republicans, for the past 15, 20, 30 years, we are $36 trillion in debt. American taxpayers' money is going out the door. You've seen what's happened with this USAID. We found out the Doge Group has come in and started evaluating a lot of these agencies. Brian, it is absolutely criminal what's going on up here. But we've all known that. But we're not able to get into some of these agencies to get their books, to be able to go through the books and find out where this money's going. And it's just an absolute crime what has happened. And I've had people call me, Coach, why should I pay taxes? And I totally agree with that. If we can't control what's going on in this country with the money that the taxpayers spend up here, what are we doing? I mean, we can't account for it. We're not using it the right way. It's just one thing after another. And this USAID thing where you're seeing money going out the door. For instance, yesterday we found out that President Biden had already authorized $49 million to go to New York to pay for illegal immigrants' hotel rooms, real expensive hotel rooms for this month only. And they're trying to stop that. But I tell you, it's a crime what's going on here. It really is. And there's no accountability. And it's been done on the Republican and the Democrat side for years and years. And there's going to be people pay the price for this. But we're going to go from agency to agency to do this. This week, they're starting auditing the Department of Defense. Pete Hegseth said, come in, look at our books. We want Doge to understand that we want to find out where this $1 trillion pretty much that we're spending every year, where it's going. But the taxpayers need to know it's their money. So it's there's a huge changeover up here. And you can feel it. I'm going to the White House here in a few minutes to go to a swearing in ceremony for the new comptroller, a guy named Rodney Hood, who's a good friend of mine from Alabama. He's going to control the money in this country going on there. And you can just feel the atmosphere over there is so much better because all these things are coming to life that people's always wanted to know that now it's coming out. But again, it is going to be a lot of things. And I told President Trump, I was with him last night. I said, "You're picking the low hanging fruit right now." He said, "Coach, there's a lot of fruit out there to pick, and it's very easy to see." So I'm excited about it. Unfortunately, the American people are going to have their eyes opened of all the money they send up here and where it goes.
I mean, it's as a military terminology, it's a target-rich environment. And talking about Pete Hegseth and the Department of Defense, and you're now the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. Is that right?
Chairman of the Personnel Armed Services part of the committee, and so I'm overall recruiting all of the academies, the West Point, the Air Force Academy, Naval Academy, anything to do with pay that goes out to any of our military. I'm over that, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm getting ready to start hearings here before long, and we're going to do as much as we can to help our warfighter.
That's awesome. One other thing I definitely want to talk about that I think is just The courage of conservatives to finally communicate common sense, no matter how much it offends the sensibilities of liberals or even just normal people who've been propagandized. You were recently in a hearing where you had the pregnant man emoji up behind you, just showing the ridiculousness of it all. Talk about that.
Well, the Democrats are, they're real close to jumping off the cliff because they've been exposed and they hate every bit of it. They're fighting back. They want to continue to fight for men and women's sports to spend money and don't tell the American people where it goes. It's hilarious to listen to them speak on the floor that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are what all they're doing is setting up our country for failure and money's going to go into Elon Musk's pocket. But the guy doesn't need the money.
Yeah.
It is just, but they cannot stand transparency. And the American people demanded it with 77 million votes to Donald Trump, and he's going to do it the right way. It's like I was on the plane with him this weekend going to the Super Bowl. We get over the Gulf of Mexico, and he says, "Today will be the last day we call it the Gulf of Mexico. Today it starts out being the Gulf of America." And he wrote out a proclamation for it. And it's things like that the American people love Donald Trump for because he's thinking about our country and nobody else's. He's making America first.
Yeah. That's incredible. On that sports front, and after this, we'll probably talk a little bit about the amazing Super Bowl and that very artistic halftime show. But before we dive into that, or actually, so you were on Air Force One with the president and going down there to the Super Bowl. I guess talk a little bit about that, and then we'll wrap it up with Title IX. So, what was it like being at the Super Bowl, and what are your thoughts as a football coach on how that went?
Well, it's just it's just you see the different side of it, and of course, President Trump's a big sports fan, and there was about six senators, and we flew with him. And of course, beautiful plane. Uh, I've traveled with a lot of escorts when with your team with motorcycles and all that. Well, this is a much on a much larger scale, but it was fun. It was fun to go and see a lot of people there in the box, and it was a lousy game. Obviously, I was pulling for Jalen Hurt and the Philadelphia Eagles, but it was not a very good game by Kansas City. And then, of course, we get to the halftime show, and it was even worse. I
Mm.
can't imagine anybody watching that halftime show. Didn't make any sense to me. And we've got Taylor Swift in the stand, and Paul McCartney, and Lady Gaga, and all these great entertainers, and we got people out there I've never even heard of before, and it was zero entertainment. For people my age, and I'm sure there's probably a few people liked it, but it didn't do anything for me. They better get control of the NFL because at the end of the day, they're going to have some growing pains in the future.
Yeah, it's kind of like Target kind of got the message and Bud Light got the message. Now it's time for the NFL to get the message. Speaking of getting the message, I think since you've come in specifically because you have the Division One coaching experience, people associate you with sports. Everyone calls you coach. The Title IX thing has been of the utmost importance to you. What do we see happening on that front legislatively to kind of follow up with what we're seeing Trump in the executive orders?
Well, he ran on that in the last 3 months of the campaign that got him millions of votes, and people are just, it's all common sense. Uh, who in the world would ever think we'd allow biological men and boys to participate in girls, dress in their dressing rooms, take showers with them? It's wrong. And it's unsafe. And President Trump said he's going to do an executive order. He did. And but I've got a Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act that I'll put on the floor to try to codify that to where it makes it permanent. The problem I got with this, though, Brian, and I read between the lines here, a lot of people looked at NCAA and they come out and said, okay, we're going to go by the executive order. Well, they really didn't. They're not going to allow competition with men in women's sports. What they're going to do is they're going to allow biological men and boys to practice, dress in dressing rooms, and shower. They're just not going to let them participate in a game. And
Wow.
so they're acting like they're doing something that's right here, but I'm having a pretty uh, strong talk with the people in the White House about this, and NCAA's they got to grow up, just like the NFL. We got to bring this country together. We got to do what's right for the American people. We got to grow our country. We got to make it patriotic. We got to quit dividing our country, and that's exactly what the Democrats want to do. But we can't do it if we got a president that wants to get this done, and you got people that's fighting him every day. And so it's time to get our country back. This is not a little thing, but this is just one of the things that the American people, they hear that it's over with now, but here you got the NCAA going, we'll go to part of it, but we're still going to let them practice. Well, that doesn't fly with me. Practice is really the most important thing because they're out there every day and dressing and in dressing rooms. It's embarrassing for women's sports in Title IX.
Man. Well, we'll wrap it up with this. On that same note, it's like the appearance of obedience to the executive orders there, but it's also all these other things where we get rid of DEI and DEI departments, and they're like, oh well, we're now the Department of Cultural Inclusivity now. We're not DEI. It's completely different, right? How are we going to be able to? It's like trying to nail Jello to the wall. How are we going to bring the hammer down and end this stuff for good?
Oh yeah, they're going to change their spots. There's no doubt about that. They'll change their uniform and they'll have some different situation where they'll move the DEI group, whether it's in a school or whether it's in a business or whether it's in the military. That they will try to infiltrate in a different way. We just got to stop it. We got to stomp it out. We got to make sure that where they're caught, they go by the law. We cannot let them circumvent the law anymore, Brian, because this DEI has absolutely ruined a couple of generations of kids, and we can't lose another. We have to get it back. We got to put God back in our country. We got to get God back in our schools. We got to do things that are morally right. And again, wouldn't it be great to be a Democrat? You don't worry about any of that stuff. You just spend money doing crazy nonsense you want to do. Don't worry about America as a country. Worry about the rest of the world. Don't worry about anything that we're going to do to make our country better every day. That's a Democrat. We as Republicans, we as conservatives, we as Christian conservatives want to make our country better and make the people better. But that's not on the agenda for the left. And so that's the reason they lost November the 5th. And that's the reason that we have got to step up and make sure that people understand that we're trying our best to get all this changed around. You can't do it overnight, but we can do it in a short order if we just keep going in the right direction. But remember that we want to make this country better and better and not spend all of our money in other countries like they did in U.S. aid for the last few years.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I know you got to get over to the White House. Coach Tuberville, thank you so much for your time.
All right, Brad. God bless you.
If you're running a ministry or you own a business, my guess is that you've been thinking about starting a podcast for a while now, but for various reasons, it hasn't happened yet. Send me an email. I need to personally connect you with Yonder Child Media. They built this studio in 2 days and tackle all of the production. I just come in, start talking, and leave. It's that easy. They do everything else. Whether you want to record at your business or a home office like they just built for me, you come in, start talking, and Yonder Child will do everything else. Send me an email. That's going to be BRYAN, Brian.Dawson, DAWSON at 1819news.com, and I'd be happy to personally connect you. Well, there it is, Coach Tuberville. It's an interesting thing to watch kind of his evolution in the United States Senate. He got up there. He was completely new. He was not a politician, very much like Donald Trump coming from the business world. You had Coach Tuberville coming from being an elite Division I coach who did phenomenal things at the University of Auburn and wanted to make a difference in the government. He saw our country going in a negative direction, and he put himself out there, and he got up there, and he had to figure out how D.C. worked, who to surround himself with, and once he did that, he has been a one-man wrecking crew in the United States Senate. He is one of Donald Trump's most trusted allies in the Senate, probably the most trusted, and that's for a reason. Donald Trump sees Coach Tuberville as someone who has the same level of conviction, and it's this thing that I talk about every single week, that there is objective good, there is objective truth, and there is objective beauty. We call it the good, the true, and the beautiful. Coach Tuberville understands that there is objective truth and that there's objective good, and he's going to fight for what's right. And so he is the people's senator. He shares the common sense values of Alabamians. That's why they love him, and it's a very interesting thing. Anytime we write an article, really in the last, I'd say, year, since he went to war with the Biden regime, over those Department of Defense funding the abortions, and he put those military holds on, and he was by himself fighting against the machine for, I think it was 10 months. He went to war, and he was being demonized by the mainstream media day after day after day after day, and he continued to stand. He had his Republican counterpart stabbing him in the back and leaving him, out there on his own. But he continued to stand, and for that now, every time I'm anywhere Coach is, and he goes to give a speech, he gets like a 2 to 5 minute standing ovation. When we write stories about Coach, and we post it on Twitter or Facebook, the comment section is just filled with people, like an outpouring of support and love and affection. That's not something we've seen a lot of for politicians in our country. Or for in our state, for that matter. And so it is refreshing to see someone who is up there, self-sacrificially fighting for what's good and what's right. And so it's been fun to watch from my vantage point. And he's forcing other people in Alabama to the right as well. I think you've even seen Katie Britt moving farther and farther right with the Lake and Riley Act that she came out with. And I think a lot of what you're seeing is because Coach Tuberville has been so consistent on being conservative. It forces others to be that way as well. So good stuff. Excited that he took the time to join us. And we'll wrap it up with that. Until next time, put your trust in God and keep your powder dry.